The sky over Seoul was a perfect, clear blue. It was the kind of autumn day that felt like a held breath, crisp and quiet. The usual hum of the city had softened into a tense silence. People stood in streets, on balconies, and in parks, their faces tilted upward. They had been told to expect visitors. Not the welcoming kind. A shadow, sharp and unnatural, cut across the sun. It was a ship, but unlike any ever built on Earth. It was a long, sleek wedge of polished obsidian that seemed to drink the light, its surface unbroken by windows or seams. It made no sound as it descended, a silent, chilling promise against the bright sky. It came to a halt, hovering directly over the grand plaza before the United Earth Council building. There was no landing, no ramp. It simply hung there, dominating the skyline. Inside the council's main observation chamber, the air was cool and still. Diplomat Kim Suman stood at the broad window, her hands clasped loosely behind her back. She did not fidget. Her gaze was fixed on the alien vessel, her expression unreadable, a calm mask of polished stone. By her side, Li Jin scrolled through a final data slate, his sharp eyes checking and rechecking the silent readiness signals from across the globe. He was the architect of the scenario, the one who had planned for every word of the conversation to come. All systems are nominal, Jin said, his voice low. Aegis is on standby. No aggressive moves detected from the vessel. It's just waiting. They want us to feel the weight of it, Suman replied, her voice even. They want the spectacle, the fear. A holographic emitter in the center of the room flickered to life without any human command. A figure resolved in the blue light. He was tall, with grayish skin and eyes that held no warmth. He wore elaborate robes of a strange metallic fabric. This was Vextel, herald of the Galactic Empire. His image looked around the room, his gaze passing over the assembled human delegates, as one might glance at furniture. People of the planet designated Terra. Vextel began, his voice a smooth synthetic baritone that echoed in the chamber. The language was not his own. It was translated by his systems, flawless and cold. I bring tidings from the Galactic Empire, which spans 1,000 suns. Your species has reached a threshold. You have achieved rudimentary spaceflight, polluted your own biosphere, and yet shown sparks of minor ingenuity. You are now eligible for incorporation. He paused, as if expecting cheers or grateful bows. Only silence greeted him. The terms are standard and non-negotiable, Vextel continued. Earth will become a tributary world of the Lorax sector. You will accept an imperial governor. You will provide a quarterly quota of resources, detailed in the data burst we will provide, including biological samples, certain rare elements, and a percentage of your cultural and scientific output. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your orbital space will become imperial territory. In return, you will receive the protection of the Empire, stability, and the great honor of contributing to a civilization far greater than your own. A screen on the wall lit up with a staggering list: minerals, water, agricultural products, even a vague entry titled Genetic Diversity Pool. The numbers were immense. Jin felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his eyes on his slate, recording everything. You have one of your planetary rotations to deliberate and provide your submission, Vextel said. A fleet awaits at the edge of your star system. Failure to comply will result in orbital pacification. Resistance is illogical and will be met with total force. The outcome is inevitable. Choose the path of peace and progress. The hologram stabilized, waiting. The herald's alien eyes settled on Suman, who had been appointed lead delegate. He saw a human woman of moderate height, dressed in a simple, dark suit. He saw no weapon, no obvious sign of power. He saw what he expected to see: a primitive, soon to be a subject. Suman took a single, slow step forward. She had not moved a muscle during the entire proclamation. Her calm was unnerving, even to her own staff. "Herald Vextal," she said, and her voice was clear, cutting through the heavy silence. "The United Earth Council has received your offer." Vextal gave a slight, condescending nod. "Then you may deliver your acceptance. We will begin the transition immediately." Suman's face remained a placid pool. "There has been a misunderstanding. We are not delivering an acceptance." A flicker of something, perhaps irritation, perhaps surprise, passed through the herald's translated eyes. "Explain. For the last 60 hours, since your preliminary scout drones were detected, this council has been in unanimous session," Suman stated, as if discussing the weather. "We have reviewed your Empire's documented interactions with 17 other tributary worlds in your historical records, which your own vessels broadcast openly. We have seen the results of your pacification on the worlds of Korea and Gentha. We have analyzed the economic indices of your so-called protected states. Our conclusion is final." She paused, letting the moment stretch. Jin watched Vextel's hologram, seeing the first crack in the alien's arrogant facade. "Earth," Suman said, each word a hammer blow of cold, deliberate certainty. "Declines." The chamber was so quiet one could hear the hum of the holographic projector. Vextel leaned forward slightly. "This is not a negotiation. You are refusing the generosity of the Galactic Empire?" "We are refusing subjugation," Suman corrected gently. "We are refusing the dissolution of our sovereignty. We are refusing to hand over our children, our resources, and our future." "The answer is no." A low, displeased sound emanated from the hologram. "You speak for your entire world? You understand the consequence? Your skies will burn." "We do speak for our entire world," Suman replied, and for the first time, a spark of something fierce glinted in her dark eyes. "And we understand the consequences you promise. But you have failed to understand us. You see a divided, primitive planet. You are mistaken." She took another step forward, now directly facing the shimmering image of the alien. "We have a message for your Empire, Herald. One sentence. You will deliver it." Vextel stared, contempt now plain on his features. "I am not your courier." "You will be today," Jin said, speaking for the first time to the alien. His tone was cool, factual. "Or your superiors will wonder why you failed to report the full context of your failure." The threat, so calmly delivered, seemed to unsettle the herald more than shouting would have. He gave a stiff nod. "Deliver your irrelevant message." Suman drew herself up to her full height. The words she spoke were not her own. They were the voice of 8 billion souls, distilled into a single unwavering line. They were not shouted, but proclaimed with a quiet, absolute finality that filled the vast room. "Tell them this. Earth proclaims the Galactic Empire has no place in Terran skies." For a long second, there was no reaction. Then Vextal's lips curled into a sneer. A poetic sentiment. "It will be the last one your species coins. The fleet will be here in 6 of your days. You have chosen annihilation for the sake of pride. A pity." The hologram winked out. Outside the window, the obsidian ship hung for another moment, as if in disbelief. Then, with a suddenness that made the crowd below gasp, it shot upward, accelerating from a dead hover to a vanishing point in the blue expanse in less than a heartbeat, leaving only a faint shimmering heat haze behind. The unnatural silence in the chamber broke. People breathed again. A low murmur of tense conversation rose. Suman did not move. She watched the empty sky where the ship had been. "They're gone," Jin said, coming to stand beside her. "For now," Suman replied. "He will deliver the message. They will come. The countdown has started." Was it wise to provoke him so directly at the end? A younger aide asked, her voice trembling. Suman finally looked away from the window, her gaze sweeping over her team. They do not understand respect. They only understand strength. We have just shown them our first measure of it. Now, she said, turning towards the door, her calmness a command in itself. Now we show them the rest. Activate the Aegis protocol. Level 1. It is no longer a simulation. She walked out, not with the frantic hurry of someone who had just declared war on a star empire, but with the steady, determined pace of a person walking a long-planned path. Outside, the people of Sol still looked at the sky, now empty. They did not know the words that had been exchanged in the chamber, but they felt the change in the air. The held breath had been released. The waiting was over. The storm was on the horizon. The silence that followed the herald's departure was a global phenomenon. News feeds showed the empty sky, and the words of the refusal were broadcast on every channel. There was no panic. There had been decades of quiet preparation for a moment no one truly believed would come. The people of Earth felt a strange, collective calm, a resolved stillness before the thunder. Deep beneath the Alpine mountains, in a place that did not exist on any public map, a different kind of hum began. This was the heart of Project Aegis. The main control center was a vast, cavernous space carved from solid rock, illuminated by the soft blue glow of countless holographic displays and status monitors. The air was cool and carried a faint scent of ozone and machinery. Here, the theory of Earth's defense became reality. Engineer Park Dayan stood before the primary tactical schematic, a glowing orb of Earth encircled by layers of shimmering data. His fingers flew across a touch interface, his eyes scanning the cascade of system reports. Aegis was not a weapon. It was a shield, a mind, and a nervous system for the entire planet. They will be looking for missiles, for laser batteries, for warships, Dayan said to his partner, Engineer Kong Hana, who was monitoring the drone swarms from her station. They will find weather satellites, communication grids, and solar farms. They will see what we let them see. Hannah nodded, her focus absolute on her screens. The scouts have already made 3 passive sweeps of the upper atmosphere since the envoy left. Their sensors pinged our geosynced platforms and moved on. They see empty metal and silica. They don't see the resonance layers within. That was the core of Aegis. The visible infrastructure of modern Earth was a mask. Within every major satellite, woven into the grids of every city, layered under the ocean floor, and within the polar ice, were the nodes of the system. They drew power from the planet's own magnetic field, from geothermal vents, from vast, hidden orbital solar collectors. The technology was not about overwhelming force. It was about perfect, adaptive reaction. Shield network at 98% saturation, Dayan called out. Across the globe, billions of tiny, nano-engineered capacitors charged. They were embedded in building materials, in roadways, in the foundations of wind turbines. Alone, they did nothing. Linked by quantum-entangled communications that could not be jammed or intercepted, they could form a cohesive energy dissipation field over any targeted area. It could not stop a sustained bombardment forever, but it could reshape a bolt of plasma into harmless light, or deflect a kinetic rod just enough. Drone caches are live, Hannah confirmed. Her screens showed thousands of green dots waking from hibernation. They were not stored in hangars. They were buried in deserts, anchored to the deep ocean floor, hidden within artificial asteroids in very high orbit. Each drone was a flat, angular thing, less a craft and more a folded sheet of smart material. When activated, it unfolded like origami into a shape optimized for stealth and maneuverability. They carried no explosive warheads. Their weapons were focused pulses of electromagnetic energy, high-powered microwaves to fry electronics, and gravity shear projectors, a tricky, energy-intensive human invention that could briefly create a knot of distorted space, enough to shred delicate ship systems or deflect fire. The AI is the key, Dayan murmured, more to himself than anyone. The artificial intelligence, simply called the Custodian, was the mind of Aegis. It was not a singular entity in one server farm. It was distributed, living in fragments across the network, able to operate even if 90% of it was destroyed. It had been trained on every conceivable scenario, on centuries of military history, on the physics of theoretical space combat. Its prime directive was not to destroy the enemy, but to render them incapable of harming Earth. It was a defender, programmed for patience and minimal escalation. Hana leaned back, rubbing her eyes. The Empire thinks this is about pride. They think we are animals guarding a territory. It is about the right to make a mistake, Dayan said quietly. The right to have a future that is our own, even if it is messy. They offer a clean, ordered cage. We chose the messy, dangerous open sky. A soft chime echoed through the command center. On the main hologram, a new contact appeared at the edge of the solar system. Then another. Then 10. The Imperial fleet was arriving, right on schedule. Showtime, Hana said, her voice tense but steady. She initiated the final protocol. Across the world, in every nation, every city, every town, alert systems produced a single, clear tone followed by a spoken message. Aegis is active. Proceed to designated shelters. Remain calm. The sky is defended. In Seoul, people moved orderly into the deep underground transit tunnels and fortified public buildings. They looked at the strange new hexagonal patterns that had been etched into the glass of skyscrapers and the panels of bridges, now glowing with a faint internal light dot in the Alpine Command Center. The view switched to a live feed from a high-altitude drone. The sky was darkening with the shapes of Imperial vessels. They were larger than the envoy ship, bristling with projections that could only be weapons. They moved into a low orbital formation, a noose of polished black metal around the planet's throat. A communication request blared through the center, the same Imperial frequency as before. On the main screen, a different alien appeared. This one wore a militaristic uniform. His eyes were cold. People of Terra, this is Commander Corvus of the Imperial Pacification Fleet. You have spurned the Empire's mercy. Your time has expired. You will now witness the cost of your defiance. The external feed showed the undersides of the lead ships beginning to glow with a menacing orange light. They were powering up their primary orbital cannons. Custodian is engaged, Dayan said, his hand hovering over a manual override that he hoped he would not need to use. Shields are prioritizing population centers. Drone swarms Alpha through Epsilon are deploying. Stealth active. On the screen, Commander Corvus gave a final, grim nod. Fire. Lances of brilliant, destructive energy streaked down from the ships, aimed at the capitals of the world's major nations. Seoul, Washington, Nairobi, Moscow all were targeted in a simultaneous, crushing first strike designed to decapitate leadership and induce terror. The energy bolts hit the atmosphere. And then a flowered dot where each bolt struck. A shimmering golden hexagon of light flared into existence, covering the entire city below. The impact sent ripples of radiant energy across the shield surface, like a stone dropped in a pond of molten gold. The light was dazzling, but beneath it, the cities were untouched. The sound was not an explosion, but a deep, resonant thrum that vibrated through the very bones of the planet. A sound of immense power being harmlessly dissipated. On the bridge of his flagship, Commander Corvus stared, his confident sneer frozen in place. His sensor officer stammered a report. Energy dissipation at 99.9%. No structural damage detected on the surface. The energy signature is adaptive. It's not a barrier, it's a sponge. Before Corvus could process this, new warnings flashed. Multiple unidentified contacts rising from the planet. They were not on our scans. They're small, fast, and their energy signatures are fluctuating. From the clouds, from the oceans, from seemingly empty patches of air, the Aegis drones emerged. They moved in silent, coordinated swarms, not towards the ships, but into the spaces between them. They did not look like weapons. They looked like shards of mirror, reflecting the sky and the ships themselves. What are they? Target them. Corvus barked, but targeting was impossible. Their signatures shifted, blending with the background radiation of Earth, with solar reflection, with the energy bleed from the Imperial ship's own engines. They were ghosts. Then, the first Imperial ship, a medium-sized bombardier, shuddered. Every light on its hull flickered and died. It listed silently, its weapons going dark, its engines powering down. It had not been hit by a missile. A targeted, overpowered EMP pulse, delivered by 100 drones working in concert, had simply reset its entire electronic nervous system. It was a temporary disablement, but a profound one. Corvus watched in growing horror as across his formation. Ships began to stutter and drift, complaining of system failures, gravitational anomalies, and sensor ghosts. They were not being destroyed. They were being embarrassed. A new familiar voice came over his communication panel. It was the human strategist, Li Jin. His voice was calm, almost polite. Commander Corvus. This was a warning. Your weapons are ineffective. Your ships are vulnerable. You have 1 hour to withdraw your fleet beyond the orbit of our moon. If you do not, our next actions will move from defensive to invasive. You have seen our shield. You do not want to see our hand. The transmission ended. Corvus stood on his bridge, surrounded by the evidence of his failure. Below, the golden shields over Earth's cities faded to a faint, vigilant glow. The silent, mirrored drones held their positions, watching. The message was unmistakable. The Terran sky was not empty. It was occupied, and it was forbidden. Commander Corvus did not withdraw. To retreat after a single puzzling volley was unthinkable. The Empire's power was built on momentum, on the shock of overwhelming force. This was a trick, he told himself. A primitive, clever trick using hidden energy sinks and electronic warfare. His orders were pacification. He would adapt. All ships switched to resonance cannons. He barked, his voice cutting through the stunned silence on the bridge. Their shield is energy-based. Find its frequency and shatter it. Deploy hunter-killer drones. I want those phantom contacts found and eliminated. The Imperial fleet shook off its daze. The larger ships began to glow with a different, deeper blue light. This was a more sophisticated weapon, designed to crack planetary defenses by finding the resonant frequency of a shield and vibrating it apart from within. Simultaneously, bays on the battleships opened, releasing swarms of Imperial drones. These were sharp, aggressive-looking machines, built for seeking and destroying. They sped towards the last known positions of the Terran mirrors, dot in the Alpine Command Center. The mood was focused, but tense. Hana watched the new Imperial tactics unfold on her screen. Their shifting strategy. Resonance attack incoming. Their drones are active and searching. They're faster than ours in a straight line. Diane studied the data flowing from the custodian. The AI was already running projections. The shield can adapt its frequency, but not infinitely fast against a coordinated barrage from 12 capital ships. Probability of failure in one sector rises to 40% if we just try to outshift them. So we don't just defend, Hannah said, a slight smile touching her lips. We misdirect. Custodian, implement protocol Will-O-the-Wisp. used the energy from their own resonance scans against them. In the sky over the Pacific, where the Imperial fleet was concentrated, the golden shields over the visible cities below pulsed steadily. The Imperial resonance beams lanced out, a complex, searching energy. But as they touched the shield, something unexpected happened. The shield didn't just absorb or resist. It echoed. It took the precise frequency of the beam, and using the vast planetary energy grid, amplified a distorted copy of it, and shot it not back at the source, but at a different empty point in space nearby, to the Imperial sensors. It looked like the shield's frequency was fluctuating wildly, jumping from one location to another in an impossible pattern. Their targeting system scrambled, trying to lock onto a ghost that was never where it seemed. The massive beams of energy crossed and tangled in the atmosphere, creating spectacular, harmless auroras of wasted power. At the same time, the Terran drones reacted to the Imperial hunters. They did not flee. They scattered, breaking into smaller, even more nimble flocks. They led the Imperial drones on a chase, not through open space, but into the upper atmosphere, where ionized layers and thermal currents played havoc with sensors. Then they used their gravity shear projectors. They did not target the drones directly. Instead, they targeted the space between the drones. A sudden, localized gravity spike would yank an Imperial drone off course, sending it crashing into its wingmate. A shear would slice through a formation, scattering them like leaves in a wind. The Imperial drones were built for a straight fight. They were not prepared for an enemy that turned the very environment into a weapon. On the bridge of the flagship, Corvus listened to a chorus of frustration. Shield frequency is unstable. We cannot achieve lock. Hunter drones are experiencing catastrophic navigational failure. They're colliding with each other. Minor gravitational anomalies are being detected all around our formation. Source is unclear. His face was a mask of fury. They were not losing a battle. They were losing their minds. The humans were fighting with shadows and echoes. Enough. Concentrate fire on a single target. That city soul. All ships, full power on resonance and kinetics. Overwhelm one point. The fleet reoriented, a massive fist preparing to crush one stubborn hexagon of light. The power buildup was immense, lighting up the undersides of the ships like small blue suns. Below, in the bunker deep under Sol, Kin Suman watched the tactical display. Jin stood beside her. They're focusing, he said. The custodian calculates the Sol shield will fail after 7 seconds of that combined barrage. The city will be hit. Suman nodded. She had expected this. The Empire's pride would force them to try and break something, anything, to prove their dominance. Authorize the pinch? She said quietly. In space, the Imperial fleet unleashed hell. A concentrated beam of blue resonance energy, surrounded by a volley of high-speed kinetic rods, slammed down towards the glowing shield over Sol. The shield flared brighter than ever, a desperate, brilliant gold. It held for 3 seconds. Cracks, like spiderwebs of light, began to appear on its surface. And then, from the edges of the Imperial formation, 2 things happened at once. First, every Terran drone in the vicinity ceased all evasive action. Instead, they dove straight for the engines of the Imperial ships, not to attack, but to attach. Their mirror-like surfaces molded themselves over engine nozzles and energy vents, not with explosives, but with a perfect reflective coating tuned to a specific frequency. Second, the custodian rerouted all non-essential planetary shield power, not to reinforce Sol, but to a point in high atmosphere directly above the Imperial fleet. Using the massive energy output of the Imperial ships themselves, now partially reflected back by the attached drones, the system created a momentary, blindingly bright hologram. It was an image of the Imperial fleet, magnified and shifted slightly off its true position, not to the Imperial gunners, locked onto their targets. It seemed for a critical half-second that their fleet had suddenly lurched upward. Their automated systems, designed to avoid fratricide, made a tiny, instinctive correction in the barrage dot. The devastating stream of energy and projectiles missed the cracking shield over Sol by less than a kilometer. It struck instead the empty air where the hologram had shown the fleet to be, expending its fury on nothingness dot at that exact moment. The attached drones delivered their payload, a synchronized, overpowered electromagnetic pulse, fueled by the energy they had just harvested from the ship's own reflected output. It was a feedback loop of the Empire's own violence. Every light on every Imperial ship within the formation flickered and died. The ominous hum of their engines and weapons sputtered into silence. The flagship, along with its entire battle group, went completely dark. They were not destroyed. They were utterly, embarrassingly dead in the water, drifting helplessly in low Earth orbit. Life support was on emergency batteries. Weapons were offline. Communications were a fog of static dot. The golden shield over Sol stabilized, the cracks healing. The sky was suddenly eerily quiet. The remaining Terran drones, like a cloud of silent dragonflies, took up stationary positions around the paralyzed fleet. On the dark bridge of the flagship, emergency red lights flickered on. Corvus pulled himself up from the floor, his head ringing. He stared at the main viewer, which was barely functioning. It showed the blue curve of Earth below, peaceful and intact. It showed his own fleet, darkened and disabled. He had thrown his best punch, and the planet had not only shrugged it off, it had used his own strength to knock him out. A new signal pierced the static on his command channel. It was a clean, simple audio feed. The voice was Li Jin's. "Commander Corvus, your fleet is disabled. Your weapons are inert. We have not fired a single shot to destroy you. Do you understand?" Corvus, his pride in ashes, could not speak. "We are sending a shuttle," Jin continued, his tone matter-of-fact, as if discussing a delivery. "It will dock with your flagship. You will meet our envoy. You will listen. Then, you and your crews will be returned to your ships, and you will leave our system. This is not a negotiation. It is your only option." The channel closed. Corvus looked at his officers, their faces pale in the emergency lights. They had come to pacify a primitive world. They were instead prisoners of its mercy. The taste of it was more bitter than any defeat. The humans did not just defend their sky. They had taken control of it completely and without violence. And that, he was beginning to understand, was a power the Empire did not know how to fight. The silence that followed the battle was the loudest thing Commander Corvus had ever heard. It was the silence of dead engines, of offline weapons, of a shattered worldview. Around his flagship, the rest of the pacification fleet drifted like a funeral procession. On his dimly lit bridge, the only sounds were the faint hiss of backup oxygen and the ragged breaths of his crew. A small, unarmed shuttle, sleek and white, approached. It moved with a quiet confidence, docking smoothly with the flagship's main airlock. No defenses fired. There were none to fire. The humiliation was a physical weight on Corvus's shoulders. The airlock cycled. A few moments later, the doors to the bridge opened. A single human walked in, followed by two unarmed attendants who carried a simple metal case. The lead human was Li Jin, the strategist from the transmissions. He wore a plain dark uniform without rank or decoration. He looked around the bridge, his expression not one of triumph, but of calm assessment. "Commander," Jin said, with a slight nod, "your crew is unharmed. Your life support will last for 72 hours on batteries. That is more than enough time. For what? Corvus's voice was a dry rasp. To watch you gloat? No, Jin said, as if the idea was strange. To listen, and to carry a message. He gestured, and one of his attendants opened the case. Inside were not weapons, but data slates and a small holographic emitter. We are going to show you why you failed, and then you are going to leave. Corvus wanted to rage, to order this insolent creature seized, but he looked at his helpless crew, at the dead consoles. He had no power here. He gave a stiff, curt nod. Jin activated the emitter. A complex schematic of Earth appeared, but not the surface. It showed the hidden layers, the geothermal taps, the orbital collectors, the quantum communication web, the distributed AA nodes. It was a vision of a planet, not as a collection of nations, but as a single, integrated organism. You came looking for a military to crush, Jin explained. His voice like a teacher's. You looked for centralized power, for fleets, for missile silos. You found none, so you assumed we had none. That was your first mistake. Earth's defense is not a separate thing. It is the planet itself. Every city is a fortress. Every satellite is a sentry. The very air and magnetism of our world are tools. The schematic zoomed in on the drone swarms. You fight to destroy. We fight to preserve. Our weapons are designed to disable, not kill. To end a threat, not a life. This makes our calculations different. You see it as weakness. We see it as efficiency. Destroying your ships would have created debris, hostility, and a reason for a larger fleet to come. Leaving them intact, but helpless, creates a different problem for you. Back in the Alpine Command Center, Daeyoon and Hana monitored the feed from Jin's shuttle. They watched the stunned faces of the Imperial officers. He's getting it, Hana said softly. Look at his eyes. The anger is fading. It's being replaced by confusion. Confusion is the first step to understanding, Daeyoon replied. They have no framework for this. For them, war is conquest or death. They don't have a box for strategic refusal. On the flagship, Jin continued, you believed your technology was infinitely superior. It is more aggressive, more direct. But it is also predictable. Your empire operates on standardization. Your ships, your weapons, your tactics, they are the same from one pacification to the next. You are a hammer, and you see every problem as a nail. He changed the display. It showed the data from the battle, the resonance beams being echoed, the drones using gravity shears, the holographic decoy. We are not a nail. We are water. You swing, and we flow around you. You try to grasp us, and we slip away. You try to burn us, and we turn to steam and rise back up. We used your own energy, your own predictable tactics, against you. The custodian AI predicted your adaptation to the shield failure with 94% accuracy. You did exactly what we expected you to do. Corvus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the failing temperature controls. They had not just been outfought. They had been outthought on a fundamental level. Every move had been anticipated. His fleet had been a puppet, and he never felt the strings. Why show us this? Corvus asked, defeat hollowing out his voice. Why not just destroy us and be done? Jin tilted his head. Because the message is more important than the victory. Destroying you sends one message. We are dangerous. Letting you go, showing you why you failed, sends another. We are insurmountable. We want your empire to understand that this planet cannot be taken. The cost will always be greater than the value, not just in ships, but in idea. He paused, letting the word hang in the air. Idea. You rely on fear and order, Jin said. Your strength is the collective, the uniform. Our strength is the individual, the adaptive, the chaotic. 8 billion minds, linked not by coercion, but by a common desire to remain free. That is a resource you cannot calculate and a weapon you cannot design. That is what you face today. Not a fleet, not a shield. A principle. Jin deactivated the emitter. The attendants closed the case. Your engineers will find that your primary systems will reboot in approximately 1 hour. The drones attached to your engines will detach and return to Earth. You will have full navigational control. You will take your fleet, and you will leave our solar system. You will deliver a full record of this engagement and of this conversation to your superiors. He turned to leave, then stopped at the airlock door. He looked back at Corvus, not as a conqueror to a defeated foe, but as one professional to another. Commander, you are not our enemy. You are just the first to deliver the message. Tell your empire this. Earth is not a prize to be won. It is a fact to be accepted. Our skies are closed. The choice is not whether to fight us. The choice is whether to waste lives learning that lesson again. Jin and his attendants left. The airlock sealed behind them. An hour later, just as predicted, the lights on the bridge flickered and came back to full power. The hum of the engines returned, a low, submissive growl. The weapons consoles lit up, but no one touched them. On the external viewers, the mirrored drones peeled away from the ships like falling leaves and streamed back towards the blue planet below. Corvus stood at the viewport for a long time, watching Earth. It looked peaceful, gentle. He now knew it was the most formidable thing he had ever encountered. He had come to break a world's will. Instead, his own certainty had been broken. Navigation, he said, his voice empty of all its former arrogance. Plot a course out of the system. Maximum safe speed. Transmit to the fleet. Follow information. We are going home. As the flagship turned, its great engines glowing with subdued light, Corvus took one last look. He saw no victory monuments, no taunting messages. He only saw the planet, whole and quiet, its golden shields now invisible, its guardian drones vanished. It was simply there. A closed door. He understood now. They had not lost a battle. They had encountered a wall. And the wall had spoken. It had told them they had no place here. For the first time in his life, Commander Corvus of the Galactic Empire believed it. The story of the Imperial fleet's silent, unceremonious departure did not travel through normal channels. It bled out as whispers and scrambled data fragments across the Galactic Council's information nets. A pacification fleet had gone to a little blue world called Terra. It had not returned in triumph. It had not returned destroyed. It had returned, intact but changed. The crews were quiet, disciplined, but their eyes held a story no official report could capture. Commander Corvus's full debrief, along with every scrap of sensor data and the recording of his conversation with Li Jin, was delivered directly to the Imperial High Command. It caused a silence there that was deeper than space. On Earth, life did not return to normal. It found a new normal. The shields over the cities dimmed to a faint, pearlescent shimmer, only visible at dawn and dusk, a permanent reminder. The Aegis drones returned to their hidden caches, but the custodian I remained watchful, a new sense woven into the planet's electronic heartbeat. People emerged from shelters, looking at their protected sky with a profound and quiet pride. They had not been saved by heroes and ships. They had saved themselves together. The Galactic Empire did not respond immediately. Weeks turned into months. The silence from the Empire was a heavy, waiting thing. In the Alpine Command Center, the watch continued. Dayan and Hana monitored the edges of the solar system, seeing the occasional flicker of distant scouts that never crossed the orbit of Neptune. The Empire was watching, measuring, trying to understand the wall it had hit. Then the summons came. Not an invasion fleet, but a formal diplomatic request relayed through a neutral trading species. The Galactic Empire, in the interest of regional stability, requested a parley. The location would be a neutral space station in orbit around a dead world, a place for diplomatic exchange. The Terran Council debated. Some saw a trap. Sumin, now the confirmed voice of Earth's defiance, saw an opportunity. They are not coming with guns this time, she told the Council. They are coming with politics. That means we have hurt them more than any weapon could. We must go. We must state our case not just to the Empire, but to the galaxy. The delegation was small. Sumin would speak. Jin would advise. They were escorted not by warships, but by a single fast transport. Shadowed by an unseen wing of next-generation Aegis drones that could hide even in the void. The neutral station was a cold, elegant ring of metal and light. The Imperial delegation was large, clad in severe formal wear. Led by a figure Sumin recognized from the briefings, Grand Admiral Vextal, the superior of the First Herald and likely Corvus's ultimate commander. His face was a carved mask of imperial authority. But in the viewing galleries, representatives from dozens of other species tributary worlds, minor empires, curious neutral parties filled the seats. The news had drawn a crowd. The proceedings were stiff, formal. Grand Admiral Vextal spoke first. He listed Earth's aggression in defying a lawful incorporation order, its unprovoked disabling of imperial vessels, its dangerous and unstable technology. He spoke of the Empire's offer of peace and order, now generously renewed despite Terra's belligerence. It was a performance for the gallery, an attempt to reframe humiliation as patience. When it was Sumin's turn, she stood. She was a small figure before the imposing imperial delegation and the vast, silent audience. She carried no data slates, no weapons. She simply began to speak, her voice amplified, clear, and calm. The Grand Admiral speaks of law, she said. But whose law? A law brought on the tip of a spear is not law. It is coercion. He speaks of aggression. But what is more aggressive than a fleet arriving to demand a world surrender? We did not seek your space. You entered ours. We did not fire the first shot. We stopped yours. She turned to address the wider gallery. He speaks of our technology as dangerous. It is. It is dangerous only to those who would try to enslave us. It is a shield. Nothing more. We have not built an armada. We have not claimed a single world beyond our own. We built a door, and we have the right to keep it closed. Vextal's eyes were icy. You isolate yourselves. You reject the community of civilized worlds. We reject the cage you call a community, Sumin replied, her voice gaining a subtle, powerful strength. We have watched your civilization. It consumes. It demands conformity. It extinguishes the very sparks of difference that make a species worth knowing. We will not join that. We propose a different principle. She paused, letting the silence gather. Every being in the chamber listened. The Terran principle, she proclaimed, and the words were not a shout, but a decree. It is simple. No sovereign world shall be forced under an imperial sky. The right to self-determination, to choose one's own path in peace, in chaos, in whatever form that takes, is absolute and non-negotiable. This is not a threat. It is a statement of fact. We have made this fact real. For ourselves. She turned her gaze back to Vextal. You tested this fact. You failed. You can test it again. The result will be the same. Not because we seek to defeat you, but because we will defend what is ours. Always. The cost of trying to break us will forever be greater than anything you could hope to gain. A murmur rippled through the galactic audience. From the representatives of tributary worlds, it was a murmur of awe, of a forbidden hope. From the Imperials, it was one of shock and fury. Grand Admiral Vistal stood. You would make this declaration? To the Empire? To the galaxy, Subin corrected. We are not declaring war. We are declaring existence. Earth exists, free, and it will remain so. This is the message your commander received. This is the message you now hear. You have no place in our skies. You have no claim on our future. That is all. There was no more to be said. The parley was over. The Empire could not argue against the fact. They could only choose to accept it or rage against it, to start a wider war over a world that simply wanted to be left alone, a world that had already proven it could not be taken, would make the Empire look weak and desperate in the eyes of every other species watching. Vex, Tal gathered his delegation and left the chamber without another word. The silence he left behind was different from the one he had entered with. It was a pregnant, buzzing silence, full of a new idea now released into the universe. The journey back to Earth was quiet. Jin finally broke the silence in their transport. They will not be back. Not for a long time, at least. You gave them away to save face. They can blame our stubborn isolation rather than their own defeat. Suman looked out the viewport at the stars. It doesn't matter what they call it. What matters is what the others heard. She saw the blue curve of Earth growing larger, a solitary gem in the dark. We are not an empire. We are a beacon that says no, and sometimes that is the most powerful signal of all. They landed in Seoul. It was night. The hexagonal patterns in the city's structures glowed with a soft, steady light. The people went about their lives under a sky that was theirs high above. In the eternal dark, the custodian AI maintained its watch. The hidden drones slept. The shield generators hummed at a low, ready frequency. There were no Imperial ships on the scanners. Only the quiet, endless stars. Su-min stood on a balcony, the cool night air on her face. Jin joined her, handing her a warm drink. They looked up. The sky was clear, dotted with ancient starlight. It's strange, Jin said. It looks the same as it always did. It's not, Subin said, a faint smile on her lips. It's ours now. Truly ours. We didn't conquer it. We just finally learned how to say mine and mean it. Above them, a single silent Aegis drone on its perpetual patrol crossed a path between Earth and the moon, a fleeting shadow against the silver light. A guardian, a sentinel. A simple statement made real. Earth had not won a war. It had ended one before it could truly begin. It had proclaimed its own space, and the galaxy, for now, had listened. The silent, vigilant drones hummed in the dark, guarding a free blue world under its own sovereign sky.